All right, y'all. Hello, hello. Welcome to Roadmap to 1 Million. I am your host, Stacey, and I am excited for y'all to be here. I'm excited to have another guest here in this season. And I'm excited for this episode because as y'all have listened to the first episode of this series, we are talking about burnout, we're talking about recovering from burnout, and we're talking about creating a business that surrounds your life and kind of keeps you from burning out. And, because I've talked about, my burnout and all that kind of good stuff and how I'm recovering and things I'm doing to kind of like shift things around. And so I'm excited to bring on Jeanette Woods today because she is going to talk to us about shadow work and energy and alignment and all the things. And she's also had a pivot because I think have you been on the podcast before, Jeanette? I think you have. It was a while ago.
We did a live, I think,
It was
on.
alive.
Mhm.
Yeah, and so we talked about she has an agency and all that kind of good stuff and has recently made a pivot into honoring things that are more in alignment with her. So I'm excited to talk about your journey. So welcome to the show, Jeanette. How are you?
I'm doing well, and I'm super happy to be here and talk about this subject. I feel like so many of us need to have this conversation. So super
Yes,
excited.
I can't wait. And I'm going to be taking notes as I always do, but I also am going to be taking notes because I want to learn stuff too. Because a lot of, for me, energy is definitely something that's very real, something I very much, align with. But it's one of those things that I haven't gone deep on and I haven't learned a whole lot about it outside of things like the chakras and, kind of yoga and all that kind of stuff. So I'm excited to really learn about this today. But before we jump in and really start talking about that, tell us a little bit about your journey. Like, what got you started with shadow work, and also tell us a little bit about how your path has evolved from having an agency to now really kind of focusing more on energy work.
Yeah, so I feel like of late I'm the queen of pivots. Like,
Yeah.
I'll say this. This has been my life's work, to be quite frank, and it's just culminated to this point where I stepped into this, or
Mhm.
let's just say pushed into this. My advisors and even the people around me were like, why are you not doing this? Why are you not doing this? And so
Mhm.
I'm doing this. This is where I'm at now. Where I was before, I spent 15 years of my life in tech, specifically in user experience design, which also really lend itself to what I'm doing now because it was studying habits, studying people, studying how people interact with different businesses and things like that. And I learned a lot through that process, and I'm taking it all with me. And so that's where I'm at now. What I do is, helping businesses, but also people align their energy for success and fulfillment. Now, what does that mean? It sounds nebulous. Essentially, what are the things blocking you? What are the emotional patterns? What are the energetic patterns? I will say this, like once I announced that I was doing this work, I had people reaching out to me because some people see it, like they sense like there's something in the way and they don't know what to do about it. So they'll take a course and then the course doesn't address it. It's so, and we'll talk about it much more, but just to kind of intro on what all is this, right? Like, what is this discussion around energy? And it's really that, like, really getting to the crux of what is it that is preventing you from getting to that next level.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I love that we're gonna, dive into that because, for me, I'll say like I am someone who cannot just do something to do it. Like I really, really have to like be behind it. Like I have to energetically be behind it.
Mhm.
And if I'm not, then I am no longer going to, I'm not gonna go as hard as I have, right?
Mhm.
Like as I know I can go. And I know that when I start something, I'm super energetic and energized about it, but then I get to the place where I'm like, this doesn't light me up anymore. One thing I will say about myself, one thing, I love lots of things about myself, but that's one of the things I love is that I will absolutely say I'm not gonna do this no more because I don't, energy it's not in it no more. My heart's not in it, whatever you want to say, right? And so I think all of that has to really kind of do with energy. So let's really kind of start with the basics. Like, tell what exactly is shadow work? I think a lot of people have heard the term, but they don't really know what it means. Me, they don't really know how it works. So give us a little bit about like what is really kind of shadow work in your eyes.
So yeah, and I do want to preface it by saying like my, you know, in the work that I do, my plan, even though a lot of this has come from like very, deep experiences, I don't necessarily plan to like leverage a lot of that language because I do agree that a lot of people are like, what is shadow work? I have no idea what that is. What I really want people to get from that, and also just what is shadow work is going into maybe the parts of our self that we are suppressing or hidden, that are kind of running the show in the background. That is the
Mhm.
big thing, right? It's what are the patterns? What are the things that um in some ways we don't want other people to see about us, right? That is kind of
Mhm.
our shadow, the rejected parts of self, essentially. Now, those
Yeah.
things don't just go away, they don't just evaporate, they live within us, right? And oftentimes they run the show in the background. One example of this, and I started seeing this a lot because people would come to me for mentorship and or opportunity, whether it was like, oh, I need help with my business and getting my business off the ground in the same way that you did. Because what I didn't mention before was that I did have a business where I was, running a design team, and we did really well, in a similar way, like six figures, like we had great years, but I felt the same way that you felt, right? Which was like, there's something missing. And I tweaked and I tried to get there, but it wasn't happening, right? In that space. Um, Other people saw my success in that way, or saw my success in tech, reached out to me for mentorship, which I was happy to do. And I started realizing that there were patterns of behavior that were preventing people from getting where they're wanting to go. Like I could give them all the strategy in the world. My top three core Clifton strengths are strategy, and it would just not happen. And what was going on that I realized was they had all this stuff in the background that, I mean, I, no kidding, literally have seen people reject opportunities that they
Mhm.
asked
Mhm.
for.
Mhm.
Like, oh, I just can't take that right now. I've seen that a lot, not just one time, a lot. And I don't think people realize that sometimes we're not even we don't have that openness to even accept what we're asking to come
Mhm.
forward because
Mhm.
of these blocks, because of these things that we're holding. So
Yeah.
this work is imperative, right? It's not, in my opinion, discussed enough, because I think what's happening is that because we use words like shadow work a lot of times, it feels out of touch. It feels like,
Mhm.
oh, that's that kind of woo-woo witchy stuff. But this
Mhm.
is something that we all need to do, right? Because sometimes we're not even realizing how we're blocking our blessings.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think that sometimes we think that there's another step or there's a strategy that's missing, there's something that we just don't know that's keeping us from getting to where we go. And what we do is we go out and we try to find that knowledge, try to learn the thing, right? We're like, oh, if only I ran ads, then I would be where I want to go. If only I did this, I would be where I want to go. But really, you have some things that are behind that as far as like, oh, I have a fear of losing money. I have a fear, maybe you grew up, and you didn't have a whole lot of access to things. And you're like holding on to that. And that kind of stuff is preventing you from investing money without having a guaranteed, ROI, or it's telling you to hold on to something so tightly that you're not investing in your growth in your business, or you're not taking a risk, or your, fear of success and all that kind of stuff. And I think that, as we unpack those things, it really does lead back to something that we've buried or something that we don't want to discuss, something that, that we may not even necessarily be cognizant of the fact that it's, that's the thing that's keeping us from getting to that next level or standing on that stage or even applying for that job, right? Or applying for that, speaking on that stage, right? Like there's so many things that I think, we are the ones who hold us back. And I think, and that's why I'm excited to learn into this. And I love that you mentioned that, like shadow work is just a word, right? Like, whatever word you want to use to describe what we're talking about, it really does go back to the energy and the alignment. And so tell us, like, is it like, like break it down a little bit about like, what does it mean to be what does it mean to be in alignment
Mhm.
energetically? Like, what does that actually feel like?
Yeah. So we are works in progress, right? We're all focusing on healing in some capacity. So I don't want to make it seem like there's like this like perfect place. The point is we're meant to grow, right? Like as people. And like you were saying, so sometimes we're in businesses and then we're like, at first it lit us up and we're great and it was fantastic. And then it gets to a point where you're like, you're growing as a person, right?
Mhm.
Ideally. And then you get to a point where you're like, wow, this is not doing it for me anymore. Right.
Mhm.
Sometimes that happens. And then it's a matter of what are you going to do after that? Are you going to
Yeah.
kind of pivot into a different place and so on? Um, but to be aligned, essentially, going back to your question, is really about making sure that you're following that, right? Whatever that, like almost like I'm thinking of the alchemist journey.
Mhm.
So You're
Yeah.
following the next thing. We're not meant to set it and forget it. Like that's not who we're meant to be, as people here on earth. We are meant to grow as people and pursue new opportunities, pursue different things. We are multifaceted beings, right? Um, and so aligning our energy is unpacking a lot of that so that we can get to our truest form of self. Like everyone's talking about authenticity, right? That's like a big thing that's like floating around. And I think the problem with that is a lot of us have cultivated a voice that is not us. And
Hmm.
again, that is
Hmm.
out of alignment, right? To be
Hmm.
specific about that energy alignment part of it, we are not aligned to who we are. And so we come up with a voice that we think people will like and accept.
Hmm.
And that is where, again, not aligned. So bringing that into alignment is when you can really achieve that authenticity. And also, again, you're yourself, right? You are yourself. You have taken, I look at it more like kind of peeling back layers of like not self, like different versions of things that you've attached to yourself to make yourself more digestible or palatable or whatever it may be, or just protection, like we have our ego. So then that flares up and then that is meant to protect us. But then sometimes, again, it blocks our blessings or we're not receiving messages or things that we need to move forward in life. And so going into alignment allows you to start to shed those things, start to become aware of them. Because as you said, that's true, right? I've done this work myself. And there's times where, as being somebody that I consider myself to be extremely self-aware, I'm like, oh, wow, I didn't realize that. Like, I didn't even think about that. Some pattern from whatever, childhood, middle school, whatever it may be, that then has kind of sat there, as this sort of old program running in the background that made me do certain actions going forward, right? And so then I had to address it. I'm not doing this anymore. This is like from, when I felt whatever way in this place in my life. So that's what alignment is starting to be aware of that, starting to address those things so that you can start to feel you don't have to put on a show anymore. You can just be yourself. You're shedding all these
Hmm.
layers, all of these things that you're trying to do to make it be palatable, be accepted, whatever it may be. And you don't have to do that work because you can just be yourself. So that to me is what I see energy alignment ultimately culminating in.
Yeah. Yeah, I love all of that, and the thing that kind of stuck out for me, when you were talking is that, like, authenticity piece, I think is so important for business owners because, there are like, I see people post things on Facebook all the time, like, like someone such and such stole my content, or, like they took somebody's post and posted it, as theirs or whatever, and like that kind of stuff is just not authentic, right? Like, especially if I see 3 or 4 other people posted it, I'm like, okay, well, something's going on here, right? Like somebody, I don't know who the originator was, but somebody that stole these posts. And I think about it because it's a very real thing, because I think that, authenticity cannot happen if you're out of alignment. Most of the people who I know who show up authentically, and myself included, right? Like we show up um authentically because we are aligned with who we are, right? And
Mm.
I'm not going to say you're always 100% like, right in that straight line of 100% alignment, but there's a line that you're kind of like dancing around, right? Like there are things that are guiding you, whether that's your values, your morals, things, just how you live your life and stuff like that. And so I think it's so important to think about where are the places in your life that you are feeling out of alignment. And honestly, like even as, someone who owns a business, if I'm out of alignment personally, that definitely spills over into my business. And so, what are some things that you think that people can do, or things that you recommend your clients do to find those areas in their business, I mean, in their life that are out of alignment, or in their business? Like, how do we figure out, if we don't know, like how do I figure out where the alignment is off?
Yeah, that's a great question. So two things. For on a personal level, this is what I recommend. Radical honesty with yourself, right? Which sounds like, all right, yeah. But hear me out. The thing about that is, if you cannot get radically honest with yourself, if you can't take a shovel and start digging into those parts of yourself that you've hidden, the shadow, if you will, you're going to sit with these old programs, right? They're going to be there in the background running the show, right? Things that you picked up from childhood, like you mentioned, Stacey, the money one is a big one, right? Money is huge. Money is neutral, right? But people attach things to the idea of money. And so then we go through our life thinking that ooh, no, this is bad. I shouldn't have too much, or whatever it may be, right? So money is a huge one. Love is another one. Huge themes that people have a lot attached to, right? Going into, first and foremost, your life will indicate where you're having those issues, right? So where are you experiencing friction in your life?
Mhm.
Some people have fantastic relationships, but, can't get a job or whatever, right? Like, and even that, I don't want to go into the weeds too much, but, energetically, love and money are connected. Um,
Mhm.
However, again, there's different places in people's lives where they're not experiencing friction, and then there's other places where they are. And then, certain people have the opposite story. So first identifying that, where are the areas where you're experiencing friction? Then going into, this to me is huge, radical honesty and accountability, because we have to take back our power and say, this is my work to do, right? Somebody else made me into a victim in this particular capacity, or somebody may have done something onto me. But where can I take as much responsibility as possible? I really want people to sit with that, because we have been conditioned a lot of times to offset responsibility, off put it, like, no, no, it's not me. Oh, they did this to me. I can't get this. Da, da, da. It's so important for us to sit with how we can be our role in that, how we are complicit in that. Why? Because that's when you can start to make changes. If it's somebody else's job, that, or somebody else's fault, right, that they did this to you, whatever, you're throwing your hands up. You're saying, I can't do anything about this. They did this to me, right? How many times have we had this conversation with people? Oh, I can't do anything. They did this to me, and then that's it. Conversation over. It ends, right? If you say, this person did this to me, but I know that I have these patterns, right, of behavior. This happens. I see this a lot. Oh, these patterns repeat in my life. I don't know why I keep attracting the same guy. I don't know why I keep attracting the same problem, right? There is something running in the background. There is some pattern that you're holding energetically that is bringing this forward, so that you are learning from this experience. And so far as you don't learn and you offset responsibility, it will keep, the lesson will keep trying to come up for you. And it's for us. Like, I was just talking to my friend yesterday about this. Like, I had, this kind of minor situation happen, and my immediate thought process is, what am I supposed to learn from this? Right?
Mhm.
Is like, how is this happening for me? Because
Mhm.
here's the thing, the quicker I get that lesson, the faster it moves on.
Mhm.
And that's how we need to start framing our way of thinking. The other part of this is also having a trusted advisor or friend that can be really open with you and hold space and help you unpack and help you analyze, because we underestimate the value of community. And I think and we're moving into a place in space, not to get super woo, right, astrologically speaking, where that's going to become even more and more important. um and I feel like it's already reflecting on the world stage, but we need somebody that can kind of mirror or help us unpack, and really, because sometimes we literally can't see things, like, we literally cannot. It's so much easier to see things objectively than subjectively. So we do
Mhm.
sometimes need somebody to bounce off of and say, and have really open conversations around, so that requires us to kind of address our ego and, say, okay, gonna kind of just disarm a little, and then have this conversation to figure out where I need improvement, or where I'm seeing, there's blind spots or whatever, what have you. And so that's what I would say, is those are the things that to me are a good place to start.
Mhm. Yeah, and one of the most powerful things I think you said was, "This is my work to do." And how powerful is that statement in taking ownership of your life and your path, right? Like, and I think that sometimes, like you were saying, we wanna push off the responsibility and saying like, "Oh, this person did this to me." Um, and then it's like, you're kinda giving your power away, right? You're
Yeah.
letting people, do that. And I remember when I had a conversation with my therapist, and one of the things she said to me, or it's a question she asked me, she was like, "What if they don't change?"
Mm,
Right? And I just was like,
yes.
it was such a simple question, but I just was like, uh, I mean, I guess they have every right to not, right? But and so if they don't, what am I going to do, right? Because I have, the only person I have control over is myself. And I felt in that moment when she asked me that question, I felt myself owning my power back, because I'm like, well, if they don't change, I'm not going to sit here and just be miserable about it, right? I'm not going to just sit here and tolerate BS, like what if they don't, right? And so I think that it's just such a powerful question to ask yourself, and reminding yourself that this is my work to do. And this is, my responsibility to move myself through, whether this burnout or moving myself through, I'm working with and figuring out what energetic blocks are holding me back. And so
Yeah.
I love all that you said, and I love the radical honesty. Being honest with yourself, because a lot of times we either run from stuff, meaning we get too busy. We allow ourselves to be too busy,
Mm.
and we don't slow down, because when you start to
Yeah.
slow down, then you have the all the things start to come back, and all the thoughts are sitting with you. And
Yeah.
one thing, like recently, like I was like earlier this week for me, um, I hadn't journaled all year this year. Like I just was kind of just like, and I'm not, and I'm in a place where I'm not putting pressure on myself
Mhm.
to go through the motions of
Yeah.
self-care, right? So because I
Mhm.
think something, because that's something else I worked on with my therapist, is like, I didn't journal today, I'm gonna beat myself up, right? But it's like you're putting pressure
Yeah.
on yourself
Mm.
to uphold a 100% standard,
Yeah.
and if you don't hit that 100% standard, then it's a problem. But it's like,
Mm.
so I've released that guilt of being like, okay, like if I,
Yeah.
I'm gonna journal when I feel like I'm ready to write some stuff down. And I had earlier this week, I wrote some stuff down. I just was like, you know what, I just feel like journaling today. Got in bed, having some weed, was writing, like just going, going, going. And I literally physically felt my brain had less pressure in it. First,
Mm.
it was a physical, like, oh my gosh, I feel like I have just released some things energetically that needed to come out, right? There were things swirling and it needed to get out, right? And so that's why I think that this work is just so important, because those are things that, if I have these swirling thoughts and I have so much pressure in my head, I can't focus on business. I can't do what I have to do, right? If I'm burned out, I can't show up the way that I want to show up, right? Because then that
Yeah.
becomes, you're beating yourself up for not showing up, even though you're capable. At least that's for me, right?
Yeah.
So I love, love, love this work, and it's something that I think is just so important. And also asking yourself, what am I supposed to learn from this? I think that that's something that people need to ask themselves about this episode, is ask yourself about, the season that you're in with life and business right now. Like, what am I supposed to be learning? Because like you're saying, like, these patterns are going to keep repeating themselves unless you learn it. So I love all that you said, because it's so, so important for sure.
And I do want to say something too on what you said, Stacey, about the guilt. So that's huge, 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 huge for us, especially if you are a business owner, which a lot of people listening probably are, and you are a doer, you're a go-getter, you're like, I'm getting those things done, right? Like we have this, and that's something that, if I'm being honest, in my experience also contributed to the burnout that I had experienced, was that constant pressure of like, you have to do the thing, you got to do the thing, you got to do the thing. And I always like prided myself on being like, yeah, I'm a doer, and I got to a point where it was like, what was going on in the background, and I see this a lot too, and this is a program that I think so many of us do have, like old sort of energetic programming, is that there's a cycle of shame,
Hmm.
right? Of we, kind of badgering ourselves for not doing the thing, right? Like
Yeah.
if somebody else were to come to us, well, yeah, but you had a hard day. But for us, for our own story, it's like, oh, you didn't do that, and you were supposed to do that today, and instead you did this thing, or you did nothing, or whatever. And not only that, but we all have like probably seven lists at the same time that we're addressing. Like you said, we have the business things, and we have the self-care list, and we got, and then it does become very much going through the motions and then shaming yourself into progress. This is something that I talk about in my course, which is that shame piece of how
Mhm.
can we find a different way to motivate ourselves? Because a lot of us do motivate ourselves through shame, of,
Mhm.
I mean, I went through a coaching program, and I remember that the coach had to tell us, and these are all like high earning women, and she had to remind us to treat ourselves whenever we had a success, because we are
Mhm.
much more likely to just badger ourselves or put ourselves into cycles of shame for not doing things, but we don't treat ourselves for accomplishing certain goals. And
Yeah.
so that is something that I do see quite a bit, and that's part of the work as well. It's one of the things that we also have to address. We have so many of these type of things in the background, and energetically it pulls us down.
Yeah.
Energetically it pulls us into a place that like now you have people talking about bed rotting and like, this kind of self-loathing of like, and then you end up just like mindlessly scrolling on social media because you're having, it's a cycle, right? And
Yeah.
so, I mean, obviously this is an extreme example, but this is what happens. And so I just wanted to bring attention to that because that's also part of it. There's so many different aspects to this work. And then the other sort of tangent that I want to go on really quick is about the business part of it. You said something
Mhm.
earlier that was also really relevant here, which is that our businesses are a reflection of us. So if we're not in a good place and we're not in an aligned place, that's going to reflect on the business. Okay.
Mhm.
And part of the work that I do is also unpacking that, workshops in understanding energy alignment for businesses. And so how does that look? It looks like making sure that what you want your business to represent out in the world is what people are receiving.
Yeah.
And what is the overlap, right? So this has the potential for you as a business owner to have pretty good ROI in the sense that you're going to understand what people think, right? And what they're wanting because there might be a disconnect there, right? There might be a disconnect because of how you are, kind of feeding your business in whatever way. Like, let's say a lot of us will give all of our energy to our businesses and we're depleted. Well, that also will reflect, right?
Mhm.
So, how is that being perceived? What is the expression, right? The energetic expression of the brand. And so
Yeah.
that's a big part of it as well. So this is extends, right, into all these different areas of your life. Anyway, I
Mhm.
just wanted to
Yeah.
mention.
Yeah, that was it's I'm so glad that you mentioned that because I feel like, like if you're showing up chaotic and you're showing up frazzled and you're showing up drained, that's what you're going to attract. You're going to get clients who are exhausted, drained, and so you have to think about, especially as a business owner, is like the energy that I'm putting out is the energy that I'm going to receive. And so if you want clients who have their shit together, you need to have your shit together. Like if
That's
you
right.
want clients who are, coming to you because and they want to be a partner with you and not want you to save them or save their business, you need to present yourself in a way that you're not someone who is Captain Save-A-Ho, right? Like, you can't be working with everybody with a pulse and having an offer for everybody, right? That's what it comes. That's how, for me, Captain Save-A-Ho shows up in business, right? Like we have an offer for everybody. And this wasn't scripted, y'all. I'm just going, but like, it's just like,
True.
that's how it shows up in business, right? Like it's having a million offers, it's taking, any kind of client on, it's creating 17 payment plans for somebody because they need they need a special payment plan. So you're going to create, give them 17 payments instead of, the two payment that you do for everybody else, right? So
That's
that's how you're
energetically
showing
desperate.
up and you're attracting those people.
That's 100% true. And that is energetically desperate, right? Like there's a level of desperation that
Mm,
that comes from that type of way of operating. And
yeah.
so then that's it's a frenetic energy, it's
Mhm.
it's not an aligned self, right? It's not
Yeah.
even your authentic self, right? So
Yeah.
then and there's a lot to unpack there around money as well when you're running your business in that way.
Yeah.
There's also a lot to unpack around trust, right? And that's
Hmm.
something that I talk about in my course as well. And so yeah, that's 100%. And the other thing that's also really important to reiterate here is that you're going to attract people at the wherever you're at, right? So wherever you're at is what is going to meet you,
Hmm.
right? So
Yeah.
I this is like so funny to me that I see sometimes people like telling themselves on social media and they'll say things like, oh yeah, I'm not putting up with somebody who's doing, whatever thing and stealing from my house or what, saying like stuff like this. And this is not meant as a
Hmm.
judgment to people in these type of situations. It's more to say that you're like, wait a second, what's going on? Like,
Hmm.
with
Yeah.
this, with your experience, right? Because you're this is your baseline, right? Like this is what you're expressing to people that that you're not tolerating, but this is, you shouldn't be tolerating that. Like that should be a given, right? We need to be
Right.
a little bit here. So wherever you're
Yeah.
at is what you're going to be attracting. Wherever you
Hmm.
are, um, whatever in a genuine way, not something like, and I want to say this goes deeper than like affirmations, right? Because
Hmm.
sometimes we'll say
Hmm.
things, but we're not energetically aligned to that thing we're saying. And
Yeah.
so affirmations are important, but I just want to also state that this is the deeper work. This is the work
Hmm.
that gets you to align to the level that you want to really be at to attract what you're
Yeah.
at, what you're wanting to come in. And that
Yeah.
to me is the important part of this, because what's coming to meet you is meant to be a lesson to get you to rise, right? If you're
Mhm.
asking for this thing, but you're not there energetically, what's going to come to meet you is something that's going to get you to grow so that you get there.
Mhm.
But so many
Yeah.
of us look at that as like, this is a thing happening to me, or like, I
Mhm.
don't know what to do about this. I'm in despair. Or, I mean,
Mhm.
I'll just give an example of myself. Like, I was asking for, you know, aligned opportunities. This was like something that I was bringing in, like, for that's something that aligns to who I am and that
Mhm.
is, paying at the right level. And all of a sudden, my entire life changed. And I was like, what happened? I was like, I don't know what went on. And then I realized in retrospect, that's what I asked for. I literally asked for that
Mhm.
because I wasn't
Yeah.
in the right place. And there was, I was calling in a different experience, right? And I didn't even
Mhm.
know that because what I
Yeah.
wanted was not in the container that I had already set up for myself, right?
Mhm.
So I had to do something different. I had to pivot out of
Yeah.
that. And so
Yeah.
that's also something to be aware of. Sometimes we become so rigid and myopic and like, you know, what we're asking to come in, and then we don't see that's another way we don't see the blessings, right? Because it comes through another way, and then we're like, no, I
Mhm.
wanted this thing. And then it's like, oh, you just turned down your opportunity of the lifetime or the
Right.
step, or so yeah, I mean, there's a lot to talk about here, so I'm going off on tangents, but I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, yeah. I think we definitely both went off on some tangents, and I love it. I think everybody appreciate it for sure. So, this has definitely been a fantastic conversation, y'all, and I'm super. And let me know, as y'all are listening, let me know if this kind of content is something that you are enjoying, because I know it's a little different than what we have been doing before. But I'm really kind of leaning into being aligned with who I am and the ways that I show up, and kind of connecting the dots between my very woo side, but also my very, data driven marketer side. So let me know, send me a, DM or something like that. But I did actually add rapid fire questions to this season. And I'm so excited because I love doing rapid fire questions. And so I started to go to do them. And that's how we're going to close out all of our different episodes, our guest episodes now. So, all right. So we're going to do rapid fire. First things that come to your mind. What's one book or podcast that you've been loving lately?
Ooh, man, I just think about Adrienne Marie Brown.
Mm-hmm.
Emergent strategy, just top of mind. I think she's incredibly brilliant. Um, just if you're not familiar, definitely check out her work, Adrienne Marie Brown. So, emergent strategy.
Okay. Awesome. Are you a morning person or a night owl?
1000% a night owl.
Me too. That's the
It's
Aries in us, I feel like.
so hard. It's like in a world of morning people, I'm
Yes.
everything like at night. I can't even do anything during the day, like except for like luxuriate. I have to like I just literally push everything tonight. Like workouts,
Yeah.
work, everything.
Yes. I hit my stride in the evening, like,
Yeah.
6 p.m. I'm like, I'm locked in. I'm ready to go.
Yes. Yes. Same.
Okay. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received about business?
Mm. Oof, that's a hard one. Best piece of advice I ever received about business. I mean, this more goes probably accordance with like what the work that I do in the energy space is more of like you already have the answers, right? So
Mm-hmm.
many of us seek at some point, where if you're somebody who's again very invested in growth, which you should be as a business owner, you've taken courses, you've done coaching, you've done all these things, and at some point you just have to trust yourself. And
Mm-hmm.
I feel like a
Mm-hmm.
lot of us go out and we try to get that validation, or we try to find like confirm, oh, is this making sense or whatever? And it just has to get to a point where we just have to trust ourselves. And I think that that to me is probably the best advice, saying you have everything you need, you just need to now trust.
I love that. And that definitely resonated with me. That hit me real deep, y'all. Um, what's one tool or resource that you can't live without in your business?
Oh man. Honestly, for me, it's people. Like I've created like a good um support system, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of advisors, that I can go to if I'm feeling stuck. And
Mm-hmm.
for me, that's invaluable. Like there's not I can talk about all the tech tools, y'all, because I spent a lot of time in that space. but it's honestly for me, it's that. It's the people. It goes to that.
Mhm.
Mhm.
I love that. That's such a great answer for sure. So this has been such a great episode. So tell everybody about where they can connect with you. I actually wanted to say, I love your quiz. I took your quiz right before we jumped on. I really like your quiz. So
Ah!
head over, y'all can check out the show notes and we'll make sure that the quiz is linked in there. It was I enjoyed it because it helped me to kind of understand like energetically where things are kind of off in certain different categories, which was really nice. So we'll put the quiz in there, but tell everybody about your course, how they can connect with you, all the things.
Yeah, yeah. So y'all can find me at IamJeanettewoods.com. And it's one N, so JeANETTE. I do have the energy quiz that Stacey was talking about on there, so take a look at that. Also, I will be launching my course next week on January 29th. So you can go ahead and sign up. The first 10 people that sign up will have it at a reduced price. So I'm offering it at to market at 200, but for the first 10 people, I'm offering it for just $100. So you might want to sign up. I already have people that have inquired about it that are already signed up, that are interested in this work. So I look forward to continuing this conversation in all the spaces that I can. I'm also on Instagram, and then also Threads. I've been liking the
Me
vibe over at
too.
Threads. So yeah.
Yeah. I love that. I've been liking threads too, to be honest. And I like it because one, I'm a Twitter, well, I call it Twitter. I'm a Twitter user.
Mhm.
And so I've always been like a, long time Twitter user. And so originally threads, I was like, oh, this is just supposed to be like Twitter. It's like light Twitter. And I'm just like, but my Twitter gets a little ratchet sometimes. And so I'm like, I like that. But Threads presented a great opportunity to start over and actually make it a business page.
Yes.
So I'm enjoying actually having Threads to be only focused on business and not crazy stuff that's on Twitter. So, but yeah, definitely, y'all. All of Jeanette's links will be in the show notes. So make sure you go to the show notes, visit the site, and we'll have links to the quiz, to her site, Instagram, all the things. But yeah, again, let me know if this is an episode that you enjoyed. We would appreciate you leaving a review or send me a DM. Let me know what you think, and I'd love hear from you to see what other topics you're interested in, or whether you kind of love this style of episode. So, thanks again, Jeanette. I'm gonna catch y'all on the next episode. Bye, y'all.
Thank you.